Shuangwen+ruthless and ruthless+Notre Dame+Double Cleanliness+Double Strength+Space+Fragmented mouth System+Actress. In the 23rd century, the young divine doctor once dressed up as an ugly woman that everyone in the Su family could bully. As soon as I opened my eyes, I was beaten and insulted by my grandmother. How could I bear it? I kicked someone away and gave them a memory. Dare to hit her, cut off your hand. If the white-eyed wolf family dares to monopolize her Su family's property and harm her Su family servants, then don't blame her for turning a blind eye and not recognizing anyone. My illegitimate sister colluded with her fiancé and wanted to play the matchmaking game, but she had no means. A move to divorce is well known throughout the city, with a hot temper that doesn't look at anyone's eyes. Even the rumored cold-faced regent has fallen in love with her. Whoever dares to make her feel uncomfortable behind her back will surely flee the capital overnight if the other party fights. Chapter 1. Dare to fight again, give it a try. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Click. The pitch-black night sky was illuminated by a bolt of lightning, and the dozen or so people standing on the edge of the cliff were clear at the moment. My today is your tomorrow. After speaking, Su Nani burst out laughing, leaped forward, and disappeared into the pitch-black night sky. Suddenly, the hearts of the dozen or so people on the cliff tightened. Below was a vast abyss, and once a person fell, they would undoubtedly die. Her dying words echoed in everyone's ears for a long time and could not dissipate. Live to see people, die to see corpses. That thing must never flow into the hands of others, otherwise, you little slut, your wings are hard, and you have learned to talk back. Yan's hands were on her hips, fiercely staring at her motionless granddaughter on the ground. She sneered, little slut, I see how long you can pretend to be dead. Her voice was full of threats and disdain, daring to play this trick in front of her without looking at what Yan usually used to do. There is no way to pretend to be dead in front of her and fool this matter today. Yan mercilessly kicked towards the people on the ground, with a fierce expression on her face. She wanted this little slut to know the consequences of challenging her. If you dare to resist her, you must give this little slut a long memory today. Her movements were fierce and powerful, and the servants beside her began to sweat for the people on the ground. Perhaps it's also because of advanced age, I feel tired and panting without kicking twice. She casually picked up the chicken feather duster from the maid's hand on the side and casually hit the other person one by one. She mocked and said, you don't even look at your ugliness, and you want to snatch a man from your sister. Yan Shi grinned lightly and pointed a feather duster at Su Nani's head, sarcastically saying, the third prince doesn't say anything openly, but it's for your father's sake. You really want him to like you, this ugly monster. Don't daydream anymore. Yan Shi looked at the person lying on the ground with a disgusted expression. Not to mention the third prince, even the dogs outside can spit out 2 bites when they see her face. After insulting the other party, it seemed as if he couldn't help but scold Su Nani's mother along the way. Just your short-lived ghost's mother, I haven't been interested in her since the beginning. If it weren't for her father's place in this court, how could I have let my son enter your Su family? If it weren't for your Su family's help to my son's future career, just like that fox-like son, my son wouldn't be interested. Yan's voice was filled with arrogance and disdain. In her opinion, the eldest princess of the court was about to be paired with her son, just a daughter of a courtier. If it weren't for her favoritism, she wouldn't have let go. The more Yan scolded, the more comfortable Su Yunchu, who was standing by watching the play, felt. What's wrong with her being a commoner? In this family, as long as her grandmother is there, she's afraid that she won't be able to kill Su Nani, this slut. Dare to compete with her for the position of the third prince's consort, she wants to see what she has as an ugly woman with a dark face. The malicious words that Yan Shi cursed echoed in the room, and Su Nani lying on the ground was awakened by those dirty words. She originally wanted to scold the other person for being sick, but when she opened her eyes, the sight in front of her almost made her doubt life. Didn't she jump off a cliff and die? How could it be in this place? The underworld. Her head swelled and she couldn't think. Looking around, according to the height of the cliff peak, she couldn't have breathed a single breath. To be more serious, she would be thrown to pieces and unable to open her eyes. She looked at the people in ancient costumes in front of her in confusion. Murmured to himself, what kind of ghost? A masquerade party or some costume drama? Before Su Nani could open her mouth and ask what was going on, she felt as if something was wrong, and an ominous feeling enveloped her heart. Okay, you dead girl, now you've learned to pretend to be silly. The old woman in front of her suddenly opened her mouth and cursed. Before Su Nani could react, she used a feather duster to fiercely beat her arm. The sudden pain made Su Nani jump up from the ground. It was also the feather duster just now, otherwise Su Nani wouldn't have woken up so thoroughly. Dare to fight again, give it a try. Su Nani took 2 steps back and warned the other party. Although she comes from a doctor's background, she has been practicing martial arts since childhood and has learned not only self-defense skills. If this were to happen, no one in this room would want to stand and walk out of this room. As the words fell, everyone present seemed to have heard some funny joke, staring at the other person up and down with silly eyes. If it weren't for that ugly face, everyone would have thought this person had been swapped. Little bitch, you have grown up now. Yan Shi was even more aggressive, pointing at Su Nani's nose and cursing. Dare to threaten her, she must break this dead girl's leg today. I saw Yan's fearless expression as he raised his feather duster to continue. But this time, her feather duster was held in mid-air for a long time and couldn't land on the other person. In an instant, the entire space was silent, and even a needle could be heard falling from the ground. Suddenly, a scream rang out, and before everyone could react, they saw that the feather duster in Yan's hand had been transferred to Su Nani's hand at some point. Immediately, he watched as Yan Shi was kicked in the stomach by Su Nani and flew back 3 or 4 meters away. If it weren't for the quick reaction of the people around me, they would have been lying on the ground with all their feet up. In an instant, the room was filled with screams of shock, as if Yan Shi had returned to the West. With that kick, Su Nani had a sense of propriety and didn't use much strength at all. If she had used a little force, this old lady would have already vomited blood and reported to the king of hell in the underworld. But she was still very angry. She started hitting someone for no reason, indicating that the person had a brain problem. If you have a brain disease, go treat it. What kind of madness is going on here? When she killed someone, the old lady didn't even know which village she was chewing her tongue at. Dare to fight with her, it's too long for me. Her voice is resounding and powerful, with standard pronunciation of every word. It doesn't seem like the timid and cowardly Miss Su from the rumored family. And that aura, those who don't understand really think that the other party is carrying at least a few lives. Yan Shi did not suffer this crime, holding on to her kicked belly and wailing incessantly. She really hurts, feeling like her internal organs have been kicked out, and her waist can't even straighten. Oh my God, you little despicable hoof. How dare you hit your elders? Today, I must sell you little despicable hoof to the kiln. Yan Shi's forehead was sweating coldly at this moment, and she was powerless to speak. Who would have thought that Su Nani would come up with such a move? The others present were not mentally prepared. A person who wouldn't even dare to step on an ant on weekdays, surprisingly took such a move today when everyone was unprepared. It's simply beyond everyone's expectations. But in their eyes, their old woman's acting skills are just good. Being kicked by a skinny monkey is like being beaten by some martial arts expert. Su Yunchu, who was supporting Yan Shi, naturally thought the same way, but the other person's just kick was completely beyond her expectations. In order to show her worries and disappointment, she wiped away her tears and slowly spoke up. With that expression and demeanor, Su Nan wished he could go up and get a needle to sew the other person's mouth. Perhaps there are some practitioners around her, and she really can't accept this pretentious appearance. Sister, it's all Yunner's fault. Why are you angry at me? How could you hit my grandmother? You. Before Su Yunchu could finish speaking, Su Nani, who was covered in goosebumps in front of him, promptly reached out to stop him. Stop, we're not familiar. She came from an orphan background and grew up in the laboratory with her master since childhood. She didn't have any relatives from anywhere. Sister, don't inquire about her age and just call her sister randomly. Are you sick? Su Yunchu was speechless when he was scolded, and his hands holding the handkerchief began to exert force. She is so big, who dares not give her face? I was actually scolded by an ugly monster today, and she had the heart to kill him. In order to show his weakness in front of everyone, Su Yunchu quickly squeezed out a few worthless tears and cried. If someone doesn't know what happened, they really think the other person has suffered a lot of injustice. Yan Shi saw that her granddaughter was being bullied, and how could she care about the pain in her body? Pointing at Su Nani was just a verbal abuse. Mouth full of profanity, spitting stars everywhere. Open your mouth a little wider, Su Nani can even see her tonsils. As Su Nan watched the old lady hold on and gain the upper hand, she hugged her chest with both hands. I was about to see a good show, but suddenly my head pricked and a strange memory flooded into her mind. The scene before me appeared like a movie, and it was heart-stopping. If it weren't for that unfamiliar memory, she would really be ready to go up and give that broken-mouthed old lady a few mouthfuls. But she found that the things in front of her were not as simple as she had seen, far beyond her imagination. She traveled through a dynasty that has never been recorded in history books. This is simply not too outrageous. Chapter 2. Surprisingly travels through time. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Does the world of novels shine into reality? Sunan smiled bitterly in her heart. The owner of this body has the same name as her, also known as Su Nani. She just turned 16 a few days ago and is the daughter of Su Jinyu, the Minister of Justice. Cowardly and timid in personality, never daring to communicate with strangers, and even having a bit of unclear speech. The old lady in front of her is her grandmother, Yan Shi, Yan Guizhi. Another green tea bitch is Su Yunchu, the daughter born to a woman from her father's hometown. Unexpectedly, today the two of them forced the original owner to give up their marriage to the third prince, and asked their illegitimate sister Su Yunchu to marry on her behalf. The original owner cannot tell anyone yet. The original owner refused to accept it, and was subsequently beaten by everyone. The subordinates were too heavy and did not grasp the strength, resulting in the death of the person. Coincidentally, she wore it over after her death. This is simply off the charts. If this were to be spoken out, one would probably be treated like a madman. Recalling this, Su Nani's anger level has exploded on the table, but what's even more peculiar is still ahead. My dear father Su Jinyu is actually a son-in-law who came to my door. Originally named Tang Jinyu, this is a bit excessive. How many outsiders have teamed up to bully the main household? This is his grandmother's, which immortal gave them dog bile. A group of grass, mud, and horses galloped past in Sunan's heart. Damn it. Fuck his grandmother's heel. This his mother is a bunch of exotic species that have become refined and dare to go to the human world to commit crimes. Her idol since childhood was Sun Wukong, the great sage of Qi Tian. This time, the group of fairies she insisted on fighting must appear circular. After accepting all the memories of the original owner, Yan Shi's mouth did not stop. Sunan regretted it a bit in an instant. Why didn't she kick the opponent to death just now? This is a kick, give the opponent an output in Naba. Regret, it is indeed a miscalculation. A burst of self-blame filled my heart, and then my mind twitched, as if something was on my mind. Although she came from an orphan background, due to her master being a top surgeon in the world, she was also pampered and raised in a honeypot since childhood. Whoever wants to flatter their master must first flatter her as the only descendant. She, who is used to listening to Rainbow fart, wouldn't tolerate being bullied by others. If anyone dares to upset her now, no one can feel better in their hearts. Her mission is to be angry and one less, and never let herself fall asleep at night. Sunan cursed inwardly and dared to bully her. She died as an old lady, and we completely got married. She looked at the culprit in front of her with anger on her face. You know this is the Su family's house, not your Tang family's. Your son is just a married son.In.Law, not the head of the Su family. If you want to continue enjoying your old age in the Su family, I advise you, Su Nani said slowly after pausing for a moment. If there are any more thoughts that make me uncomfortable, then don't blame me for driving all of you outsiders out of the Su family, leaving you with no place to stand in the capital. A group of outsiders even bullied the master's family, who gave them the audacity. As soon as these words were spoken, the scene fell silent. No one expected that a person who couldn't hit a fart with 3 sticks on a normal day would learn to resist today. Yan Shi angrily raised his hand and pointed at the other person, you. This is a reversal of the sky. She was so angry that she raised her hand and pointed at Su Nan, unable to utter a single curse for a long time. Her son is now the Minister of Justice, which is her lifelong pride. But only the title of son.In.Law who came to her door has always been a hard knot in her heart that she cannot dispel. Now being mentioned by this dead girl in front of so many people, she wished she could go up and tear the other person's mouth apart. In that case, she can say that others cannot. You. What are you? You. I didn't think I wanted to say anything, so I closed your mouth full of yellow teeth. She was almost suffocated by the bad breath. She couldn't speak fluently, but fortunately, she had trouble with her. It's like ants climbing a scale, I don't know how much weight I have. After Su Nan's output, the servant standing outside the door was almost suffocated with laughter. Who would have thought that someone who is usually quiet would speak so fluently when it comes to people? Yan Shi was about to die of anger because when she was nervous, she couldn't speak at the edge of her mouth. She pounded her chest and feet in a hurry, and her blood pressure skyrocketed. Now she is hurting all over and being insulted in front of so many people. There is no comfort in this body or heart. For a moment, I didn't know what to say to Counterattack, but then I fell to the ground and started crying. Oh my! I was beaten by my granddaughter, is there any way for me to survive? How can this old lady survive? Sigmotzi drowned, and she didn't believe it. This dead girl will still be wanted in the future. Everyone was also startled by Yan Shi's sudden move, standing on the side one by one, unsure of what to do. If it weren't for the look in Su Yunchu's eyes, they would all want to sit on the ground and howl twice. The comical actions one by one were captured by Su Nani's eyes, and in her opinion, it was not something ordinary people could do to suppress laughter. If you don't hold it back well and laugh out loud, it's just a small matter and you're suffocating yourself, then it's all over. This is to use this kind of incompetent means to make her compromise, and Yan Shi also threw out her old face. This is really a small knife stabbing the buttocks, opening the eyes. Watching the Su Nan stand as if watching a play, Yan Shi's anger rose. She stood up straight, pushed away the servant, and wanted to go up and hit him. But I just took 2 steps and my mouth hasn't even opened yet. I was scared by Su Nani's glaring eyes and retreated several steps in a row. Sunan secretly cursed, just like this, he bullied and bullied the original owner. If I were to do something better than her, I reckon this old lady would want to go up and wipe her shoes. Immediately, he gave it away with a blank eye, so angry that the other person's face turned green into a prairie. Yan Shi. Please wait for me. Probably kicked hard by that kick, Yan Shi squatted on the ground in pain with her stomach in her arms. No matter how the servants assist, there is no intention of standing up. But that mouth is not idle at all. Sunan frowned and clenched her fists with a creaking sound. If it weren't for her age, she would have wanted to go up and slap her big mouth hard. Crying and mourning. She didn't hesitate and scolded Yan Shi, the Su family is just your age. If outsiders hear about this, they would think they have killed you. It's like losing one's own mother, making everyone want to bow and offer incense. Sister, how can you talk nonsense like this? Su Yunchu walked forward 2 steps with a weak expression. Before he could open his mouth, he was scolded by Su Nani with 1 sentence. Chapter 3. Wants to play the matchmaking game. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Isn't that right? I looked at you just now and wished she could get into the coffin quickly. She wasn't lying, just because the other person looked at Yan Shi just now and wished he could devour her alive. Grandmother, Yuner didn't. She wronged me. She just wanted us all to turn our heads against each other, as she wished. Su Yunchu took Yan's arm and began to sob, as if she had been wronged. I want to sow discord and delusion at this time. Sunan chuckled twice, which made him anxious. In such a home, she doesn't believe in a family that loves each other and is filial to her mother and children. Everyone has their own calculations in mind, and naturally, the closest talents are best utilized. Su Yunchu lowered her head and choked, cursing Su Nani a lot in her heart. She just glared at Yan Shi, so what? She still tried to avoid her. She cursed inwardly, useless people never die. They can't even fight a little slut. I really don't know what's the use of eating so much good food in a day. It's a waste of food. Now that even she's implicated, it's better to die in the hands of the other party and drive them away. Now that Yan Shi is being scolded by Su Nan, she can't connect. If she doesn't say anything more, she might lose such a good opportunity today. In her opinion, Su Nani is just an uneducated and unattractive woman. What skills can she have? Just now, I was just too anxious to let the other person see that scene. It's better to remain calm in the future. This person is already unattractive and has such a bad heart. No wonder the 3rd prince doesn't like her. After cursing inwardly for a while, Su Yunchu slowly stood up and took 2 steps forward. In order to show the difference between the two, Su Yunchu also broke free and pinched her thigh hard. The pain suddenly hit her, and her eyes were filled with tears, like a pure white lotus. Sister, we are a family. Why should we say such hurtful things? Su Yunchu quickly spoke, with a soft and helpless expression that was pitiful. In the eyes of outsiders, they do not dislike Su Nani's unattractive appearance. Is it possible that she, as an ugly woman, still despises others? A family. Who is their family now? Sunan looked at Su Yunchu, who had just spoken, in shock. She really wanted to pry open the other person's head and study it carefully. A normal person's head is filled with brain, this woman's head is filled with dog poop, right? What does son.in.law mean? She doesn't believe the woman in front of her and doesn't know. As a family, I really know how to put gold on my face. She, Su Jinyu, dares to bring the 3rd child back to her original wife's home to raise, which has already violated the bottom line of most people. Now he still wants to encroach on the original property and become the true master of the Su family. That's his mother bullshit. The imperial palace is so big, why not relocate the whole family? The throne is so good, why not take it for yourself? The imperial tomb is so grand, why not dig out their ancestors for 18 generations and bury them? It's really like a toad marrying a frog, with ugly and playful flowers. Sunan didn't give face to the other party either, and looked at the woman in front of her with both hands wrapped around her chest who was still trying to play a romantic card. This is the Su family, are you also bleeding from the Su family? Su Jinyu is not surnamed Su. He changed his surname from Tang to Su in order to make his father.in.law trust him. This incident also caused a sensation in the capital city. Some people accused him of forgetting his roots, while others accused him of not being a man eating soft food. Perhaps it was also because Su Nani was stuck in the opponent's dead spot, and Su Yunchu got stuck on the spot without saying a word for a long time. Su Yunchu. She is not part of the Su family's bloodline. If it weren't for Tang Jinyu wanting to rely on the Su family to become an official, their family would still be digging in the ground now. The other party's questioning left Su Yun unsure of how to answer in the first day of junior high school. I originally wanted to show off well in front of my grandmother, but in the end, I was humiliated by her. She secretly swore in her heart that one day she would kill this little slut. When she dies, this Su mansion will inevitably be renamed Tang Mansion. Her mother will become the true housewife here. Sister, we are all my father's daughters. Even if you don't like me, you must never hit my grandmother. Not to mention anything else, just hitting the elderly is enough to ruin her reputation. If sister has any anger, just throw it on Yunner. Grandmother is already old and can't withstand such a beating anymore. She didn't believe it anymore, and Su Nani could still calm down and not cause trouble. At this moment, in the eyes of others, Miss Air is beautiful and kind-hearted, considering the overall situation. Their young lady is a malicious, cunning, and ruthless person. There is no comparability between the two. Su Yunchu is still waiting for the other party to get angry, so that she can continue her second plan. I never thought that Su Nani would not even pay attention to what she just said. In order to provoke the other party again, Su Yunchu also spared no effort. Sister, please make things easier for me and the third prince. The third prince doesn't even have you in his heart. If you marry, you will be a widow. Why did you make everyone unhappy? Sunan Yi is still incredibly calm. Just a few mocking words from a little girl have no killing power for her, so there's no point in getting angry. But the other party's words just now invisibly proved a fact in front of her, that is, this person's facial features are mediocre and their values are not correct. However, she still admires the courage of Su Yunchu to say such shameless words in public. But this also proves one thing, which is that personal behavior is not related to family background in some people. For example, the young lady in front of me, the daughter of a wealthy family. Did the wall of the second hospital fall down? This thing made you run out. Sunan said these words calmly and slowly. Su Yunchu. She doesn't understand, what second hospital? What does the other person mean by saying that? Seeing Su Yunchu's stunned expression, Su Nani was almost amused by what he said. She suppressed her smile and tilted her head to look at the woman in front of her who pretended to be weak. She now wants to pry open the other person's head and study carefully why their thinking is different from that of ordinary people. I really thought everyone was like her, unable to let go of a pile of shit. This is ancient times, and it is truly eye-opening to see a young lady who has not yet left the cabinet say such brainless words. I still want to help the two scumbags, men and women. If their brains are useless, they should donate. I can also make some contributions to future scientific research and sacrifice less monkeys. Did the third prince tell you these words? This brainless thing. As soon as these words were spoken, Su Yunchu suddenly felt uneasy. I said that before to provoke the other party, but who knew that not only did the other party not get angry, but they also questioned themselves. In an instant, she realized that what she had just said was too risky and wanted to continue explaining something, but was easily interrupted by Su Nani. Okay. Upon hearing that the other party had agreed to marry on their behalf, the two grandmothers and grandsons were excited and held hands, wanting to celebrate in advance. But when the other person said the next thing, the two of them almost died of anger in place. Chapter 4. Humiliation. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Looking at the excited expressions of the two, Su Nani wanted to remind them that they were getting excited too early. Since the third prince wants to choose another good relationship, please inform him and ask him to talk to the emperor about his divorce as soon as possible. If she wants to play with the act of remarriage, she won't accompany her. If it doesn't work out well, it will cause a headache. She learned from the original owner's memory that the marriage between the third prince and the Miss Su of the Su family was arranged by the late emperor before his death. Not to mention whether the original father can make decisions, even the current emperor cannot go against his own father's will. Not to mention these commoners. The original owner was unwilling, and she couldn't possibly have committed such foolishness. These people want to die, but don't try to implicate the Su family. Su Yunchu was deeply regretful at this moment. If he hadn't mentioned earlier that the third prince disliked Su Nani, he must have been able to agree to this matter. But everything has already been said, what else can she do? The only thing she can do is to break the jar. In an instant, the original character design was still a pure white flower, revealing its true form. She straightened her waist and slightly raised the corners of her mouth, as if standing in front of her like some lowly servant. Don't you even look at your ugly face covered in black spots. It's just a person who feels disgusted when they see your face. What kind of spring and autumn daydream do you expect the third prince to take a liking to her? The third prince is dissatisfied with this marriage, but everyone knows it. It's not cheap to marry a man who doesn't like her. My third prince and I have been secretly engaged for life, and both my parents agree. As for you, you are so ugly. Su Yunchu stopped pretending now and looked up and down at Su Nani, who was covered in dirt before, sarcastically saying, I can let my father marry you to Wang who sells meat on the East Street. After speaking, Su Yun's whole body trembled with a smile and acted recklessly, as if he had already seen the scene of Wang marrying Su Nani. The lame and pockmarked woman paired with an ugly woman with black spots on her face is a perfect match. Ha ha ha. Under the guise of being good for my eldest sister, I humiliated her completely. How much hatred and resentment is needed to speak such heartless words? Looking at Su Yunchu's smug expression, Su Nani looked at him like a fool. This is fortunate not because of their own era, otherwise this person would have been designated as a human specimen by those perverts. Looking at Su Yunchu's imposing appearance, Su Nan couldn't help but shake his head. I thought the other person was a difficult character to deal with. Now it seems like a dog-tailed grass with a human head. So you're so optimistic about Wang Since there is someone who looks right at them, how can she not fulfill them? Ha ha ha. The art style suddenly changed, and Su Yunchu's grandmother and grandson, who were originally laughing recklessly, realized something was wrong. Before they could question each other, Su Nani smiled and turned around, taking big steps to leave. Oh my God, you little slut, come back to me. Yan Shi was so angry that she wanted to pursue the other party, but because she had just been kicked, she couldn't straighten her waist now, let alone pursue anyone. She suffered a loss today and lost face in front of so many people. How could she easily let Su Nani go? If the other party still doesn't agree on this matter today, she will invite a monk to teach this ignorant little slut a good lesson. Damn girl, please stop me. After speaking, Su Nani took just 2 steps and stopped straight with a dark face. Then, with a sudden turn of the head, both the grandmother and grandson were choked back with words that had just reached their mouths. She had her hands on her hips, with a posture of ready to fight at any time. Why, is this keeping me for dinner? It's best to have a good reason. Seeing the frightened look on the two of them, Su Nan muttered inwardly, "Cut, it's just this cowardly behavior. Fortunately, you want to cause trouble for her and not go to take care of your current virtue." Upon hearing what Su Nani had just said, Yan's heart immediately began to beat wildly and her breathing became difficult. Leave her to eat, both the grandmother and grandson can eat her raw. Seeing that the two were silent, Su Nani let out a soft snort and strode towards the door. It's not that she didn't give those two guys a chance to talk, it's that they didn't talk, and that's not her fault. You. Yan Shi's hand, which had just been lifted, hung down heavily again. She wanted to curse Su Nani, but her mouth just didn't listen and she couldn't say the second word for a long time. Within 3 seconds of walking, Su Yunchu's shoulders suddenly sank, causing her to exclaim in shock. Grandmother, what's wrong with you? She's really afraid that this old lady will die on her now, how unlucky it is. She cursed inwardly, to die in front of that slut would ruin her fortune. Besides, her current goal has not been completed yet. This dead old lady must not have anything to do. In an instant, Yan's roughly 140-pound grid completely overwhelmed Su Yunchu, who was only about 90 pounds on the side. As Su Yunchu was about to fall to the side, if it weren't for the servants behind him rushing in time, the two of them would have been lying down together. Are you dead? Hurry up and get a doctor. Su Yunchu's previous gentle and kind persona is now completely collapsing in front of servants. She shouted and scolded everyone around her. What Su Nani didn't know was that after she left, the room was almost in chaos. The curses and howls were as loud as if Yan had passed away. The original owner was prohibited from walking in the courtyard, and Su Nani spent half a day exploring before returning to his own yard. But when she pushed open the courtyard door, she was all in a bad mood. What the fuck? Su Nan-e couldn't control her mouth for a moment. The tidy and clean courtyard in my impression no longer exists. What appeared before her at this moment was a battlefield full of chaos. The vegetables planted on both sides of the yard have long been uprooted by people, thrown on the ground, and even stepped on by someone. The swing originally tied to the big tree in the yard was also cut off and hung on the ground. This is comparable to a small demolition site, but unfortunately, someone deliberately wanted to make her unhappy. She stood at the entrance of the courtyard and looked around, then immediately locked onto several distant targets. You better pray not to be caught by me, and then don't blame me for chopping you all into pieces. To make fertilizer. A simple sentence that doesn't hurt or itch doesn't pose any threat to those people. But when they heard the piercing laughter, they felt uneasy. The leader hurriedly withdrew his neck and stood still, his legs trembling. He dared to swear that the young lady in front of him must have been possessed by a fierce ghost, otherwise the opponent's internal strength would not have been so great. The laughter just now easily lifted the hem of his clothes, which could not have been achieved by a weak woman. But just now before Su Nani could continue to rage, the sudden sound in her ear changed her next plan. Master, consider in the long run. Chapter 5. Provocation. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Su Nani's foot, which was about to step out, suddenly stopped in mid-air, initially thinking it was his hallucination. But when the voice repeated in my ear again, I almost couldn't control my emotions. It seems to be an unnamed voice. Did her private customized space manager also come over? If that's true, it would be even more exciting than winning a prize worth millions of yuan. Fortunately, she managed her expression well, otherwise she would have had to take out her gun and shoot it in mid-air at this moment. Nameless, why are you here too? Su Nani used her mind to engage in a conversation with her space steward, and her current mood is indescribable. Unnamed coughed twice and then explained, you chose soul binding, so wherever your soul goes, I will follow you. Upon hearing this explanation, Su Nani instantly remembered the scene when binding the space. In order to have a zero-distance conversation and operation with space, she resolutely chose the most top-level soul binding. As the name suggests, as long as her soul still has consciousness, she can operate her own space anytime, anywhere, regardless of the situation. Because it is a soul binding, every time she uses space, her stamina will be consumed slightly. In order to better control this highly competitive high-tech product, she trains in winter and summer. Work while exercising. Even if it's a vacation at home, she won't let herself be lazy for a minute. It was also through her own efforts that the space system could only be upgraded to level 1 or 2 in 3 years. With her persistence, it was upgraded to level 8 in 5 years. When I saw that I was about to reach level 9 and I could open my arsenal permissions, this kind of thing happened. She started performing craniotomy at the age of 16, followed her master to participate in top international medical projects at 18, and won the title of a world-renowned expert in traditional Chinese and Western medicine at 20.1. What a promising young man. But now, surprisingly, he has become a pitiful little person who is easily bullied by others. At the thought of this, the fists in my sleeves were clenched with a creaking sound. The blue veins on the forehead are even more frightening. If she hadn't figured out the specific situation here yet, she would have really wanted to chop off those people's hands. She remembered this grudge, and when her body became stronger, she would surely avenge all her past grievances. Now her body is too weak, just because of a few simple conversations just now, her physical strength is almost unable to support this body. It's like carrying a stone for a whole day, feeling weak all over, breathing quickly, and even small stars beginning to float in front of me. Now she wants to find a place to sit down and rest for a while, and it would be even better if she could lie down. People often say that she is as thin as a hemp stick, probably referring to her current state. The feeling that even gasping for breath would greatly damage one's vitality is now as if one is about to breathe out. It seems that she needs to make a good plan, while dealing with those white-eyed wolves, to make her body, which can easily collapse at the sight of the wind, stronger. Otherwise, if this grudge has not been avenged yet and you have been punished again, it would be more than worth the loss. Just as Su Nani was looking for a place to sit down and rest, the sound inside the room, like a kitten, suddenly caught her attention. At first, she thought it was some kind of kitten or puppy, but when she saw the person tied up and stuffed into the wardrobe, she didn't know what words to use to describe her mood at the moment. All the information about this girl in the original owner's memory. This little maid's name is Xiang'er, 13 years old, and she is a close maid beside the original owner. She is also the only one who serves her. When Xiang'er was 3 years old, she was almost sold to the kiln by Ye. It was the original owner and mother who bought Xiang'er. On the surface, Xiang'er was a servant, but everyone could tell that Xiang'er was wearing the clothes of the original owner's childhood and eating the same table as the original owner. The relationship between them is also better than that of a sister's. Early this morning, the original owner was taken away by the Yan family, and the little maid was blocked in the courtyard by several maids. She was not allowed to go anywhere, and no matter how much the other party begged at that time, it was useless. In the end, he was slapped several times and the corners of his mouth were bleeding. Recalling this, Su Nani's fist couldn't help but tighten even tighter. She quickly untied the rope on Xiang'er's body and lifted the person out of the wardrobe. A thin and small body, less than 1.3 meters tall. This doesn't look like a 13-year-old child, it's clearly the height of a child who hasn't graduated from kindergarten yet. Due to long-term malnutrition, Xiang'er has a yellow face and thin skin, a large head and a small body, which makes people feel heartbroken. "Miss, where did they hit you?" As soon as Xiang'er was unbound, she quickly checked Su Nani's injuries. She felt extremely guilty. If she were stronger and taller, she would be able to protect her master, so that the young lady wouldn't be bullied by the old lady's people. Looking at Xiang'er's self-blaming expression, Su Nani felt heartbroken. "I have been beaten all over my face and care about others." She quickly shook her head, forced a smile from the corner of her mouth, and comforted the other person, saying, "I'm okay, no one will bully us again in the future." She wanted to make those who had bullied them regret their choice. This is not only a guarantee for Xiang'er, but also a commitment to the spirit of the original owner in heaven and a responsibility to all members of the Su family. My foundation is still there, and the most important thing now is how to make this body less fragile. Her revenge plan has just begun, and there is still time to start exercising now. Now she hopes that those people will all live well and not die before she takes action. Otherwise, it's really not fun anymore. After careful examination, it's fortunate that Xiang'er has skin injuries all over her body. After taking the medicine, it's time for her to eat. Watching Xiang'er go to the kitchen to serve food, Su Nani finally had time to take a closer look at this room, which was no better than a beggar's nest. If it weren't for the memory of the original owner, she would have doubted if she had walked into the wrong yard. No matter how it looks, this place doesn't seem like a residence for a wealthy lady, but rather a residence for beggars outside the city. The old house, which has been in disrepair for a long time, has large patches of peeling off the wall skin, revealing mottled dirt bumps on the wall. The tiles on the roof are incomplete, turning into water curtain holes during the rainy season, and the surrounding wood is stained with mold. In a room as big as a palm, there are only a few simple pieces of furniture, placed alone in the corner of the wall. Sunan frowned and cursed inwardly. Is this a place where people live? Is there no other place to live in this Su mansion? She looked around with her hands around her chest, trying to find an object that matched her identity. After inspecting for a week, she couldn't find anything that could be of high quality, which made her feel even more shabby. She was extremely curious about one thing now, which was what the father who could let her biological daughter live in such a place looked like, and whether his heart was as dark as this. Just as Su Nani was planning to go to another place to take a look, he was suddenly attracted by something covered in a cloth in the corner. It turned out to be a slightly deformed copper mirror. In an instant, those people kept cursing her as an ugly voice, looping in their ears. It was this voice that made Su Nani more interested in her face. Being scolded by everyone is ugly, how ugly this face must be to make those people remember it. Upon this thought, driven by curiosity, Su Nani lifted the cloth off the bronze mirror and shone it on himself without hesitation. I was a bit skeptical about the clarity of this bronze mirror, but when I saw my current appearance in the mirror, I almost couldn't be seen off with my current face. Fortunately, I didn't eat anything in the morning and there was nothing to vomit in my stomach. How can this be described with ugly words? This must be disgusting. The face is covered in black spots and hair, which makes people feel nauseous in their stomach. Master, this body is poisoned. Nameless promptly reminded the other party, and it also found that it is a component of a certain chronic poison. Not to mention whether Su Nan can accept this face or not, even this non-physical system feels that watching it too much can easily lead to nightmares. Upon hearing the unnamed words, Su Nani quickly placed his hand on his wrist to check the situation. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds in less than 6 minutes, Su Nani's face instantly darkened. She checked the poisonous spots on her face again with a dark face, and when she saw the abscess on her neck, the mirror in her hand slipped out of her hand and fell to the ground. Chapter 6. Counterattack. You are listening at novel full.audio. De co lois ara trong quatrin lay text. Chapter 7. Apologizing to the killer. You are listening at novel full.audio. After speaking, Lu picked up a rolling pin from the ground and hit several kitchen maids. I let you talk nonsense, I let you sow discord. Seeing that Lu wanted to act in front of her, Su Nani turned around and pulled Xiang'er, who was still watching, out of the kitchen. Her goal had been achieved, but she was not interested in watching her perform a great play of educating servants here. As soon as she left, she seemed to be educating Xiang'er, and her voice was so clear that even servants standing in the distance could hear her clearly. They all hang out in front of people, who wouldn't be able to hear the truth behind that. Remember, this is the Su family, with only one wife. Not all cats and dogs can claim to be the masters of this Su family. No one has greater power than our Su family. If someone dares to bully you in my Su family next time, embarrass you and say bad things about me, then call me back. It's best if they can't even recognize their own mother. If you are beaten to death or disabled, don't be afraid. I will bear the burden and there will be rewards. If you can't win, I'll accompany you to fight those blind people who can't distinguish between big and small kings when you come back. She is not holding Lu Yuzhen accountable now. It's not that she really isn't holding her accountable, it's just that the timing is not yet right. Now as long as she doesn't turn her back for a day, Lu Yuzhen won't want to sleep soundly. Upon hearing her own young lady's words, Shuangwen straightened her waist and nodded confidently, "Don't worry, young lady. I will make them regret growing a pair of dog eyes then." At first, she was worried that the young lady would suffer losses. As soon as she entered the kitchen, she put a few pieces of chili noodles on the cutting board. But when she saw their young lady kick over 3 or 4 times as many cookly as she did, she knew that the day had come for their master and servant to turn over. As expected, watching the scene of those 3 old women kneeling on the ground with bruises and swollen faces begging for mercy, she could wake up at night to cheer. It was precisely Su Nani's words that made Yen Shi, who had originally intended to explode in place, instantly hesitate. Everything that happened this morning is vivid in her mind, and she has to admit that Su Nani has changed. With just one glance at someone, she was confident that this dead girl was not easy to deal with now. If she asked the kitchen not to cook at noon, it was her words. Lu Shi was just a tool for transmitting messages. Just now, Su Nani looked so cruel. If she had found out, she would have had to take off her arm. At the thought of this, Yen couldn't help but shudder. She took 2 steps back in a row, and if it weren't for the people behind her blocking her, she had plans to escape the scene. She didn't know why, but for no reason, seeing Su Nani's eyes made her feel hairy and uncomfortable. Just like just now, she was originally feeling unwell, but her internal organs began to ache again, and the cold sweat on her forehead kept coming out. I originally wanted to minimize my sense of existence, but who knew that Su Nani dared to walk towards her? And looked at her with that provocative gaze and warned. "If I hear or see something that makes me feel bad again, don't blame me, Su Nani, for sending you all to the place you should go. As for where to go, it's not someone else's the final say. Most of the servants here are bought, and the sales contracts are also in the Su mansion. As for whether to drive them out or sell them somewhere, it depends on her mood." After Su Nani left, everyone on site felt like they had unloaded 100 pounds of heavy burden. They gasped heavily and looked at Yen Shi beside them, each with a heart for cursing. They all followed the orders of these people before targeting the master and servant everywhere. If someone retaliates afterwards, they don't mind exposing their crimes one by one in front of everyone. "Madam, it's not that we're trying to trick, it's that little girl who's too ruthless." Kitchen Lady Li and her companions knelt pitifully at Lu's feet, pleading for mercy. They were beaten one by Su Nani, with bruises and swollen faces. Not to mention, each person's right hand was also broken by a stick from the other party. They were sweating all over in pain and didn't dare to scream. Only by begging for mercy and confessing to the Lu clan can their lives be saved. Kitchen Li was beaten even harder, and now the blood is still flowing from the corners of her mouth. In a fit of anger, she wanted to say that she would definitely make Su Nani look good in the future. Before she could open her mouth, she was fiercely bumped by someone beside her. The other party cursed fiercely in their heart that they didn't have a long brain. Just now, what Su Nani said outside was not meant for one person to listen to, but for everyone in the Su mansion to listen to. Upon hearing that, Yen dared not even fart. She, as a little cook, wanted to get involved in someone else's family affairs. She must be tired of living. Seeing the disheveled appearance of the few people, Lu's heart was filled with anger. At this moment, she wished to chop this useless old woman into small pieces and feed her dog. In a fit of anger, she smashed everything on the ground that could be smashed. She really didn't expect that all the things she raised were useless. Eating them one by one, they were so fat and strong that they couldn't even beat that little slut. It's better to raise a group of pigs and have some meat and fish during the Chinese New Year. Get out, everyone get out of here. A few people were driven out of the kitchen by Lu Shi with a rolling pin, and the battle was like a zombie being released from a cage. Having fought 2 battles in a day, the servants on the road clearly saw that their attitudes had changed significantly. "Miss, you were so amazing just now." Shuangwen transformed into a little fangirl, admiring Su Nani in front of her. She swore to be the same as the other person in the future. Su Nani remained silent, and Sixth Sense told her that these people would never give up easily. As for what kind of moth will emerge, it is unknown. The whole yard has been tidied up, and it will be 3 hours later. Just as Su Nani was preparing to sort out his current thoughts, he heard a loud bang. The wooden door, which was not very sturdy, was kicked so hard that it hit the ground with a heavy bang. Dust is flying and smoke is flying. In an instant, the already small courtyard felt like it was about to be demolished and rebuilt. Damn it, what non-eyed dog has come to seek death again? Sunan-E was instantly angry. Before she could even sit still, someone came to her door to beat her. Before Xiang'er could see who the person was, a tall figure stood out from the smoke. The other person has a tall and upright figure, towering like a mountain peak. If it weren't for Xiang'er tugging at Su Nani's sleeve, she would still be staring at the man walking in the dust. As the man gradually approached, it was only then that she realized that the man was actually Su Jinyu, the biological father of the original owner. No wonder Su Yan had to be with this man so much back then, and her relationship was also a face control. Sunan frowned and looked at the man gradually approaching them, feeling guilty in her heart. Isn't this a proper plan for a beautiful man? It's not an exaggeration to say that with this appearance and figure, it's really easy to charm a wealthy lady. It seems that people who don't worry are not easy to age. People in their early 40s look like they are in their early 20s. And this appearance, about 1.8 meters tall, with wide shoulders and narrow waist, and long legs. The wheat-colored skin added a touch of hardness to his handsome face. In her opinion, if Su Jinyu were a general, he could be as handsome as the universe. Unfortunately, the mud cannot support the wall, and we have to rely on others to secure our current position. No wonder the original owner, a 16-year-old girl, has a height of nearly 1.7 meters, and love is an excellent genetic trait inherited from her biological father. Sunan-E was still in a state of being restrained by beauty, but as the man gradually approached, she suddenly let out a voice that completely shattered her dream. Can't this house accommodate you anymore? The man's piercing voice was deafening, frightening the cats under the eaves to hide. Sunan shook her head in disappointment, not because the other party was shouting or questioning her indiscriminately. But to make her fully understand what it means, God has closed a door for you and will definitely open a window for you. Just now, he still looked like a graceful young master. His mouth was like a male duck being choked on its neck. It's so unpleasant that it's going to die. It's better to be mute, at least this image can leave a perfect impression on people. Apologize to your grandmother with me. Su Jinyu looked like someone owed him 8 million. After speaking, I will go and grab Su Nani's arm. I was easily dodged by the other person before touching my clothes. Apologize. Sunan was speechless for a while to the extreme. In his heart, he cursed inwardly, is it okay for this foolish and brainless person? She stared blankly at the man in front of her, she couldn't believe her ears. My father actually asked her to apologize to the murderer. This is his mother sick. Or did I fall into the urinal when I was a child, and feces and urine poured into my head? Chapter 8. Revenge the Heaven, Dare to Educate Laozi. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I have been a sun.in.law here for a few days, sitting on the lotus root platform like a toad and claiming to be a king. Su Nani glanced at the other person and angrily questioned them, have you ever known the truth about the whole thing? If you have understood it and can still come and brush your presence, it's a bit of a brain drain. If you don't even ask and run to her to question, then this person is somewhat useless. Sunan looked into Su Jinyu's eyes, wanting to hear an answer from the other party. After waiting for a long time, I only saw the other party blowing their beard and staring, but didn't see any useful fart coming out. The words just now were not only what she wanted to ask, but also for the poor girl who was beaten to death by her own grandmother. Su Jinyu was questioned by his daughter for the first time, but he didn't react for a moment. But it cannot be refuted. As soon as he entered the house, he heard that Su Nani had beaten his mother. He didn't have time to inquire about what was going on. But in her opinion, no matter what the elders say or do, the younger generation should not disobey and must endure. Moreover, this dead girl even started beating her grandmother and bullying her sister. It's simply unacceptable. Seeing that Su Jinyu had not spoken for a long time, Su Nan's heart tightened with a feeling of heartache. She knew that this was caused by residual ideas from the original owner, and she felt heartbroken and sad. My biological father is unwilling to protect his child. What is the point of her life? Su Nani let out a deep sigh and once again set her gaze on Su Jinyu. She originally wanted to speak politely to the other party, but now it seems that there is really no need for that. If you want to convict someone, shouldn't you first understand the cause and process of the matter? Su Nani suddenly chuckled. I believe Mr. Su is not unaware of this process, is he? As a courtier of the Ministry of Justice, if you don't even know the normal process of hearing a case, it's better to retire early and return home to avoid embarrassing yourself here. Watching Su Jinyu's face gradually turn red with anger, Su Nani felt a little more comfortable in her heart. There's no way to make her feel frustrated. I used to get angry in the court today, but now that my daughter is scolding me like this, my anger is burning instantly. You're going against the weather. Is that the tone you're talking to me in? Dare to educate me, who gave her the audacity? The newly placed flower pot was kicked over by Su Jinyu, and the soil scattered all over the ground. Su Nan frowned and said, this is the only way to rely on one's own abilities to serve in the Ministry of Justice. If it weren't for my grandfather's connections, I believe I wouldn't even be able to secure a position as a county official when I return to my hometown. Nowadays, being able to thrive in the capital relies on my grandfather's connections. I don't know how to be grateful, but now I still have ambitious ambitions and have plans for the Su family. He got angry, and Su Nani couldn't get used to it either. But they won't vent their anger on the things in their own yard, let alone the fact that this yard is already penniless. If it were to be smashed again, it would be no different from a beggar's nest. If my father can't give my daughter a satisfactory answer to this matter today, then she will have to go to the palace to face the emperor and let the emperor and the empress dowager make the decision for her. The emperor, for the sake of his mentor's face, will help her regain justice no matter what. The old empress dowager and her grandmother are close friends again. How can she sit back and ignore the good sister's granddaughter who has been bullied? Moreover, this marriage was first proposed by her at the beginning. Dare to make her unhappy, okay. Come on. She wants to see who will be so angry and vomit blood next. Su Nan, with a fearless appearance, truly angered the other party. But so what, does he dare to take action? He dare not. When was Su Jinyu threatened? It was her own daughter. Suppress your anger and take a deep breath before speaking again. The third prince will become the crown prince in the future. If you marry him, you will only drag down his legs and make the world laugh at him for marrying an ugly ape monster. You will not bring any help to his future, only implicate him. Su Jinyu looked at Su Nani with a resentful expression. This is also for your future good. If you are constantly ridiculed and cursed by those outsiders, can you bear it? In the future, when your sister becomes the future crown princess, you can also enjoy happiness with her. Isn't this good? The portrayal of a good father was vividly portrayed by the other party, as if the speech just now was so inspiring. Until now, he still feels that the other party is just unwilling to give up the marriage to his younger sister, which is why they are so unreasonable. From beginning to end, he never noticed that Su Nani had completely changed, becoming articulate and his eyes filled with murderous intent. My father's sarcastic words made Su Nan's face turn black again under her veil. Also for her good, hee. Don't listen to what you just said, is that human language? Why did her face look like this? Is it unclear to Su Jinyu? She dared to use her face to talk about things now, and she suspected that this family had planned it from the beginning. When I first joined the Su family, I can't say it was just their starting point. It's just that Su Yan was blinded by love at the beginning and didn't see the man's scheme. I originally thought the other party would have a hint of conscience, but now it seems that she is still too simplistic about human nature. Whoever he likes to marry has nothing to do with me. But if he wants to play the trick of remarriage, Su Nani suddenly looked at him with this serious expression. I still advise Mr. Su, if you want to die, don't implicate the rest of my Su family. Otherwise. Old Master Su is gone, but his students and friends are still in that court. Pack up Su Jinyu, it's like playing. In the original owner's memory, there are still some old servants from the Su family. Just arranged by the Yen family in the courtyard, responsible for washing everyone's clothes, sheets, and so on in the mansion. It's almost impossible to get out of the yard. Unless there is birth, aging, illness, or death, one can pull it out the back door and find a place to bury it. As soon as she thought of this, her hands unconsciously tightened, and she wished she could strangle the man to death at this moment. At first, Su Jinyu wanted to be accepted by the Grand Tutor Su, but he promised to write one letter after another. That poisonous oath was also issued one after another. A man's mouth, a deceitful ghost, this statement is not at all false. When Su Jinyu heard that the other party was so disrespectful, his fists in his sleeves creaked. He wanted to get angry, but due to the threat from those people, he could only endure it for now. Perhaps due to face saving, he left with a black face and brushed his sleeves. It was precisely his arrival that made Su Nani more aware that this family was not so difficult to deal with. Just, how can we kill this family? We really need to plan carefully. She left Su Jinyu, and Su Nani and Xiang'er closed the courtyard door again, casually closing it. I've been entangled with those weird guys all day, and now I'm tired and hungry. I smashed the kitchen during the day, and now eating has really become a problem. When Xiang'er was away, Su Nani quickly took out 2 bowls of cooked instant noodles from the space and placed them on the stone table. There are also a few pieces of beef, some slices of ham sausage, and a boiled egg inside. These things are all prepared in advance for going abroad. Who knew that every time Master brought a chef, the delicious food stored in the space was put on hold? But luckily for her, what things looked like when they were put in was exactly the same when they were taken out. This also solves her problem of eating now. Xiang'er ran over smelling the fragrance, and when she saw those 2 large bowls of noodles, her chin was almost startled. They are so poor in their yard that they only have to eat dirt. Where did this fragrant beef noodles come from? Looking at Xiang'er's stunned expression, Su Nani pulled the person to the table and sat down, putting chopsticks into the other person's hand. Eat while it's hot. If this thing gets cold, it really doesn't taste very good. Perhaps I was also hungry, and in less than a while, the food in the bowl was eaten clean and even the soup was consumed. Eating and drinking enough makes one drowsy. Sunan-e asked Xiang'er to return to her room early to rest, and every day that followed, they had to be ready to join the battle at any time. Watching Xiang'er leave, Su Nani called out anonymously. How are the herbs being prepared? Her face won't be ready in a short while, she needs to prepare everything in advance. Nameless. There are a few medicines that we don't have. Because they are not commonly used, they are prepared very little. I used it once before, but I haven't had time to restock. Sunan looked at the list that Nameless had made for him and felt a bit embarrassed in an instant. Jean Tengman, this name was also seen in medical books. It is said that the last golden vine was set on fire 1,000 years ago. From then on, there were only picture books on medical books, and no one had seen physical objects again. Are you sure there were golden vines in this era? She had never seen them in history books during this dynasty, so she wasn't sure if she had what she wanted. If not, she would have to find a replacement to try. I can't just wait to die like this. Nameless has long been investigated, and the golden vine of this era has not been destroyed by anyone. But there aren't many in this country, and it's even difficult to find. When Su Nani heard that there might be some nearby places, he was extremely excited. Chapter 9. What? That ugly monster actually doesn't want to. You are listening at novelfull.audio. She couldn't wait for a moment, she wanted to quickly see what the actual object looked like. Nameless and speechless for a while, it didn't realize that its owner was an impatient person. Fortunately, this is ancient times with regulations on curfews and city gates. Otherwise, it would have to accompany this ancestor on a trip to the mountains tonight. Upon hearing about the curfew, Sunaniduan seemed to have thought of something. In her opinion, as long as that thing is not extinct, it will eventually be found. Some things can only be done on this curfew night. Now as long as it's not extinct, even on the dragon pagoda of the old emperor, she has to find ways to find it. As long as she finds the golden vine, in her opinion, as long as she has money and goes to a larger pharmacy, she can buy other medicinal herbs. Thinking of this, Su Nani suddenly realized that the money in her bank card couldn't be used here at all. She doesn't have any currency here at all. Suddenly, my good mood was brought back to its original state, like a deflated balloon. The Su family is now the steward of the Yen family, and even if the Lu family wants to buy something, they have to ask the Yen family one day in advance. She beat up that old lady today, so she must not even think of taking out a penny. Besides, with her temper, she wouldn't bow down to others. So now the problem is, she can't access the money at home. Where does the money for medicine come from? Money is indispensable in any era. As the saying goes, money can make ghosts grind, and that's not false at all. After much thought, the best way is to secretly go out and make money. But in this era, there is no girl who has not yet left the cabinet to do business. That's not embarrassing the Su family. If it's just this white-eyed wolf behind her, it doesn't matter, just throw it away. But behind her is the Su family. My grandfather is the emperor's mentor, and she cannot let him be poked and scolded on the spine below. Just as Su Nani didn't know what to do, an unnamed sentence completely woke her up. Master, why don't women dress up as men? In this era, men, no matter how old, can show their heads. And women cannot. With a single word of awakening the dreamer, Su Nani instantly remembered her own craftsmanship in making human skin masks. The master was worried that she would be recognized outside and would be in danger, so he sought professional help to teach her how to make a human skin mask and makeup techniques. She remembers buying a lot of materials to put in the space in order to make the mask almost identical to a real person. She also developed a special adhesive that cannot be peeled off even when applied to her face, without harming her skin. If you want to take off that mask, you can only use a self-prepared adhesive remover. If you want to forcibly tear it off, then be prepared to be disfigured. Do whatever you say. Su Nani quickly flashed into the space and quickly designed a 3D facial model on the computer. In her opinion, since she wanted to redefine her identity in this world, it naturally had to be flawless. Once more in line with her facial shape and skin tone, a handsome face with soared eyebrows quickly appeared in front of her. Undoubtedly, it is a high-tech mask that was exchanged with a human life, and this mask can be made to be completely fake. How is it? Su Nan lifted the corner of his mouth slightly, revealing a strange curve. Nameless praises, it can definitely captivate a group of handsome men and beautiful women. It's not exaggerated, just this face, not to mention that humans like it. Even the system without substance feels that this face will definitely become the next Panin. It was precisely this sentence that Su Nani suddenly had a very scary idea. The night gradually deepened, but Yan's room was brightly lit. If you don't care about that little slut anymore, I'll almost be beaten to death by her. Yan Shi's rough and crazy crying echoed throughout the room. Just now, the imperial physician came over and said he has suffered an internal injury. Take medicine first and rest well in bed. How could Su Jinyu not associate this internal injury with Su Nani? With the other party's thin arms and legs, could they turn someone into an internal injury? This is impossible. Everyone was scolded by Yan Shi and their heads were almost buried in their stomachs. If it weren't for the rising power of the medicine, they wouldn't have left so early. But when Su Jinyu returned to his room, everything in front of him almost didn't send him away in place. Who is it, who did this? As soon as Su Jinyu entered the door, he stumbled on his own stool. After the servants lit the lights, they realized that his house had just been looted by thieves. He pushed aside the servant beside him and ran towards a place in panic. When he saw something still there, he was ecstatic, as if nothing had happened. It was precisely this action of his that made the people on the roof see where the more precious things for Su Jinyu were. The Su family is bustling here, and the third prince's mansion is not much better. As the wedding date approaches, if we don't take care of that ugly and eccentric Su Nani, he will really become a laughing stock of the world. What? That ugly guy wouldn't want to. The uplifting news spread to the ears of the third prince, Nangong, and he suddenly felt as if his ears were ringing. Waste, a group of waste. What do we raise you in this hall for? You can't even handle an ugly monster. What's the use of you? In a fit of anger, he smashed the teacup in his hand onto the ground, frightening the servants outside the door to kneel on the ground. The desk in front of me was flipped to the ground, and even the Nanyang treasure I just got yesterday was smashed to pieces. The butler on the side felt heartbroken and quickly approached to persuade. Your Highness, calm down. It's not worth ruining your body for an unrelated popularity. That treasure is worth 10,000 taels of gold. It's really a pity to just smash like this. Listening to advice, having a full meal, Nangong can still achieve this. Smashing one's own things is a foolish act, and he doesn't feel sorry for hitting these useless trash. I saw the third prince swing his arm and beat the kneeling people fiercely. His posture and movements were no less than those of Sister Rose's strange attacks. Sparks are about to emerge. Perhaps also tired from fighting, the third prince sat on the nearby Grand Tutor's chair, panting heavily. He took a deep breath and turned his head to look at Wang Yu kneeling on the ground. What else did that ugly monster say? He wanted to hear what insatiable demands that ugly woman could make. If he dares to suffer any losses, he doesn't mind letting that useless Su Jinyu retire and return home in advance. Wang Yu quickly recounted in detail what happened in the Su mansion during the day, and also mentioned the matter of Su Nani asking the third prince to find the emperor to divorce. A person who usually dares not even lift their head actually started hitting their grandmother today. Even sending a message to the third prince to find the emperor to divorce, is this really something a coward can say? If the third prince had the ability to divorce, he wouldn't have come up with this bad idea. I thought the other party would at most agree to the request of a maid and 2 husbands, but who knew it would be a miscalculation. Just as Nangong was about to go berserk, the butler beside him quickly spoke up. It was precisely the next sentence from the other party that slowly revealed a successful expression on Nangong's face. Okay, go arrange it. If this is done, this hall will reward you. He would like to see how she, being so ugly, will explain to everyone when the time comes. How else can he prevent him from marrying Yuna as his wife? As soon as the servant left, Nangong became excited and drank wildly while holding a wine jug. He didn't even notice that outsiders had entered the study. Chapter 10. Moving. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Late at night, Su Mansion, Su Yunchu's boudoir. Miss, Wang Yu is here, Chuyer whispered in Su Yunchu's ear, afraid of angering this ancestor. When Su Yunchu, who was sleeping, heard that it was Wang Yu's name, he suddenly lost all sleep and sat up straight from the bed. Sure enough, we can't get together even if we're all the same. Su Yunchu was in a good mood after listening to what Wang Yu had just said. As if the unpleasant thing during the day had not happened. Go back and tell Brother Jing that I will definitely do this to satisfy him, he said, not forgetting to take an ingot of silver from the maid's hand and put it in Wang Yu's hand. Wang Yu smiled and took the silver. Don't worry, the master only has you in his heart. We only recognize you as the female master. They are all human spirits, who doesn't understand who's being careful. Seeing off Wang+Yu, looked around and saw no one. She quickly closed the door and walked up to Su Yunchu, saying, "Miss, I have the best candidate." When the two of them were talking about this just now, she already had a candidate in mind, and this matter was only suitable for that person. "Okay. Then I'll leave this matter to you." She didn't believe it anymore, and this time she couldn't kill that ugly monster. Chui'er is Su Yunchu's personal maid, and she has also participated in many of the other party's heartless actions. Because Su Yunchu was not convenient to walk outside on weekdays, the task of finding people or buying some special items was entrusted to Chui'er. So she knows no fewer people than Su Yunchu who make a fool of themselves. The two of them were pondering their next plans in the room, while the man in black on the roof was watching the show with a bright expression on his face. But things couldn't go as planned. "I was still planning how to deal with Su Nani at night, but something happened the next morning." "Did you move a place last night?" Lu hurriedly asked. She didn't hear anyone come in last night. How can things disappear for no reason? It must be that she hid something somewhere else after she fell asleep. Is there something she shouldn't know? I have been guarding her from the beginning until now. Is she just not worthy of the other party's trust? After a moment of grievance, Lu couldn't understand. What is more important than life? Su Jinyu's face is now pale, and even the bodies that have been dead for a few days are not as ugly as his face at this moment. He insisted that he had not moved his position at all and was still sitting in the hidden compartment behind the shelf. Someone must have taken the opportunity to steal something while he was asleep. "Is it you? Did you steal something while I was asleep at night?" Su Jinyu grabbed Lu Shi's neck and questioned, as if losing his heart. "If that thing is seen by someone, then it won't come to life." Lu Shi was no match for Su Jinyu, who was tall and imposing. After a while, his face turned red. She was so choked that she couldn't even say a retort. If it weren't for Su Yunchu's timely arrival, her mother would really have been strangled to death by her father. After so many years of being married, don't you still believe her? Su Yunchu felt the urge to kill his mother as he watched her being choked to death by the other party. When he comes back from something, he takes his mother's anger out and has the ability to strangle the person who made him angry. Cowards, cowards. They only know how to deal with the trash in their nest. Presumably awakened by the scolding, Su Jinyu sat by the bed with disheveled hair. Even the upper court was helped out by servants. As soon as it calmed down here, I was startled by the sound of drums and gongs outside. When it was learned that it was Su Nani who moved with her people and moved into the house, they were preparing for the future third prince's consort. Both of them didn't have time to tidy themselves up and ran outside. Sunan gathered a bunch of people from unknown sources, boasting and fighting, with over a dozen elderly women behind them. They each held an object in their hands and chatted and laughed as they walked. This is really the first time a young lady has sat in a sedan chair. Before dawn, a little girl knocked on the door and said she was looking for a moving woman. She paid 1 or 2 silver each and even managed a lunch. How could they not go for such a good thing? But when they saw the courtyard where the young lady lived, everyone thought they had gone to the wrong place. The courtyard, when it comes to the beggar's nest outside the city, is more complete than this. Looking at this courtyard again, the most similar thing is only the big tree in the yard. As for other things, that's simply not eye-catching. A few women smiled and shook their heads. The sun.in.law of this wealthy family's doorstep is not suitable. Take a look at Mr. Su as an example. As soon as his wife left, he brought back a woman who also had a child, and I heard that the child was about the same size as this legitimate young lady. Don't you understand that yet? They have already gotten along with this woman, otherwise it wouldn't be possible for the children to be so old. A few people chatted while walking, while Su Nani, who was walking at the front, had a joyful expression on her face. She has a small heart and eyes, and cannot tolerate a grain of sand. If she has any grudges, she must avenge them within 24 hours, otherwise she will have difficulty sleeping and eating. She is very satisfied with the effect now. The capital is such a big place, she dares to guarantee that within a day, even the little doll who just left will know about this matter. Isn't it face-saving? She wanted to see how much face Su Jinyu still had when the news of the Ministry of Justice's maid abusing his legitimate wife's daughter spread. There was nothing to move in that dilapidated yard, so almost all the people who came were empty-handed, following behind the large army. Sunan-e only allowed them to follow behind the crowd and suppressed the scene, entering the new courtyard and saying a few auspicious words to each person, leaving footprints in every corner. There are 100 older women who are willing, but before they reach their destination, they all think of a basket of auspicious words. I have also heard a lot of this gossip. Along the way, one by one, their mouths never idle. It was already 20 minutes after arriving at the new courtyard, and looking at the magnificent decoration, Su Nan couldn't express a feeling in her heart. Using their Su family's money to save their face is a deep trick. If it weren't for Xiang'er's remark last night, she wouldn't have known there were still new houses in this mansion that were not inhabited. It's ridiculous to say that this legitimate daughter lives in a dilapidated house, sleeping on a wooden bed, while the illegitimate daughter leads a princess-like life. If this were to be spread, people would still be poking their spines and cursing. What is the distinction between legitimate and illegitimate? She doesn't believe that Su Jinyu doesn't understand. If you dare not boldly favor this, then don't blame her, Su Nani. When she first entered the door, she saw the figures of the Lu family's mother and daughter from afar, probably still cursing her mother in her heart now. Sunan's lips slightly curled up under her veil. How could she not say hello to her neighbors when moving? Then he turned around and walked towards the door. As she had guessed, Su Yunchu, who was standing not far away, was almost furious. Watching Su Nani move those junk things into her newly built house, she felt extremely nauseous and uncomfortable all over. Mother, that house has been dirted by the people brought by that slut. How can I get married from there in the future? That's the house where she got married, and it's just messed up by those dead old ladies. She can't swallow this breath. Lu also did not expect that Su Nani's courage could reach this level. Don't tell anyone, just find someone to move. Who is not being taken seriously. Just as the two were about to turn around and move reinforcements, a greeting suddenly shattered their plan. Good morning. My younger sister and aunt are here to celebrate my housewarming. Sunan's usual greeting caught the attention of many people. Her voice is sweet, gentle, and doesn't have much aggressiveness at first listen. The expressions on the faces of the two mother and daughter not far away had a somewhat different meaning. It's said that this wealthy family has many rules, but I don't think it's like that. The group of elderly women behind the team saw the expressions of Su Yunchu and Lu Shi in that moment very vividly. Along the way, I even looked up and down at the mother and daughter. It doesn't matter if you don't look. As soon as the old woman returned to the crowd, she started whispering.